greatest city in the whole world. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York, these vagabond shoes, they are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up, mammy, in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap.
They had thrown away the rule book and applied very different standards in assembling a very eclectic class of people who had very different profiles and records, which of course to me immediately became the explanation for what I was doing in Johnson Chapel that day and how the hell I ended up at Amherst. I went to a prep school in Connecticut, and when college time came, I decided I wanted a small college, and Amherst seemed to be one of great credential and esteem, so I thought I would try it, and went the early admission route. I remember from Loomis, they sent up a group that included Felix Springer. I'm trying to think who else was there, but it was set up for Coach Ostendart to show us around the campus and to give us the recruitment pitch from the perspective of playing football. Now, I did not play football and had no intention of playing football, so I did scratch my head a bit about what Amherst College was and would be, but I finally did understand that it was about something other than football. I got a letter before I got to Amherst that said, and I don't know if it was Dean Wilson's office again, but that they had combed through the class and the prospective first-year students in Amherst and found two people whom they thought would be right to undertake an experiment of living with a blind student in Amherst. And they came up with A.C. Kuda and me. With Charlie Hodge, of course. And it did, of course, make me question one more time whether the admissions office at Amherst knew what the hell it was doing. So I arrived and met Charlie and AC, and clearly it was much more dramatic meeting AC than it was Charlie, but it was a wonderful year, the three of us actually. So I take this challenge and I describe my response to a very bad grade I received on one of my English papers. He got that paper and called me aside the next class and threatened to have me expelled, to have me, disciplined, and how outrageous it was that I dared write like that and express, those feelings about him and to use language like that. So that was one of my challenges in the first year. And then, of course, in physics, and they called me up because they thought I was looking around the room to copy people's papers, but I brought up my paper where I had put a 0 on it and an X at each of the 4 or 5 questions, so it became clear that I wasn't looking for any assistance as much as it was needed. I stumbled through the core curriculum, and And I drank the Kool-Aid and believed how important and essential a core curriculum was. So when I took my son up to Amherst 10 years ago to consider admissions there, I heard the admissions people explaining how Amherst has done away with any requirement whatsoever, because that is, of course, the bedrock of learning, that you not be confined to the core curriculum. So somebody will have to explain to me where the wisdom properly lies. I get in the Army Reserves and become a weekend warrior so I don't have to leave the country. So I lost a year between Amherst and law school, got through that, worked in the Hartford area when I finished the 4 months of boot camp, and then I came to New York, to NYU, and went to law school here. I worked mostly with the unionization of white-collar professionals, so that I worked in representing interns and residents who were just unionizing at the time, and dealing with issues of how many hours they could work consecutively. I worked with university faculty and represented university faculty organizing and unionizing, and I had, when I was around 30 years old, I had the privilege of arguing a case before the U.S. Supreme Court on the issue of whether university faculty are supervisory or managerial employees. I worked and still work with the fire officers in New York, and a group that I have deep feelings about, and have worked with them since virtually the beginning of my career, right through 9/11, where I lost many friends and many leaders there. I work with, now I've gotten involved in representing people in the theatrical industry, so I represent directors and choreographers, their union. It's a national union. I represent press agents and theatrical managers, also have a separate union, and am involved in various issues in the theater world, and I'm married to someone who lives in that world, or works in that world. She is a major figure in New York theater, and last year she won her 4th Tony Award. So I've had a lot of fun being connected to the theater world. Her name's Lynn Meadow, so I do spend a good deal of my time being Mr. Meadow. I am very fortunate. I'm a New Yorker who gets to see the sky. One of the few buildings that's not surrounded by others here. So I like coming to work. Being at Amherst and being surrounded by such excellence, it felt at that time that if any of us didn't become the secretary of a major department for the federal government, we had failed. So our expectations coming out of Amherst, I think, were as high as the sky, as high as this view we're looking at. And then, as we know, we entered the real world. So I remember coming back to, I think it was the first time, our 10th reunion. I think I came back, went there with Steve Nagler, and suddenly I saw my classmates, and there were the great football players, and there were the great scientists, and there were the great writers, and the poets, and the comedians, and most of us were doing work that the world does.
It's up to you, New York.